My research paper is on Der Reuter. It's commonly titled Night, Death, and the Devil, and it was Albert Durer's 1513 engraving. It's symbolic of late Gothic, early Renaissance. It's a piece of art depicting a Christian's journey through a hellish life to the kingdom of heaven. As you can see here, it is of an elderly knight. He sits on this beautiful, perfectly proportioned horse, and there's a dog running alongside of him. The horse appears like it's in mid-stride, and it's the frame of the center of the engraving. The knight is riding through this narrow gorge, and he's passing by the devil and death. But he's not looking behind, and he's not looking to either side. He has this expression of resolved duty. The knight and the horse are the largest forms in the artwork, but they're surrounded by a tangle of branches, roots, rocks, the horse's tack, and hair. Upon the hill in the background there is a fortress bathed in light, and there are various objects on the ground, and a salamander is scuttling away. It is believed that the Durer was influenced by a passage from Erasmus's Enchiridion Millistus Christiani that says, "In order that you may not be deterred from the path of virtue because it seems rough and dreary, and because you must constantly fight three unfair enemies, the flesh, the devil, and the world, this third rule should be proposed to you. All those spooks and phantoms which come upon you in the very gorges of Hades must be deemed for naught. Look not behind me." The knight is an aesthetic and a moral figure. His armor is a symbol of strength, but Durer enhances the typical Nuremberg armor to represent the, quote, breastplates of righteousness, helmet of salvation, and sword of spirit, end quote. The oak leaves in the horse's forelock and tail symbolize Christian faith and loyalty, which refers directly to the passage in Revelation where Christ proclaims to be the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. The knight is riding towards the kingdom of heaven, or possibly holy Jerusalem, which is depicted as the highest and lightest point in the engraving. The devil figure is a conglomerate of beasts. There's a pig's snout, the ears of an ass, the goat's horn, its eyes, and cloven feet, and there's an extra horn sprouting from his head. He carries a pike and is dressed in rags. The pike and the rather huge curved horn on his head are obviously phallic symbols referring to the devil's lust. The goat's cloven feet refer to the forked tongue of the snake, the deceiver of Eve in the Garden of Eden. The beast's expression is one of an imbecile, denoting the devil's unimportance in the knight's unwavering faith in God. Lavac states, "There was no standard image of the devil in medieval art. Many of the features commonly given to the devil were originally those of pagan gods, such as the Roman god Pan and the Celtic god Cernunnos." The knight passes by Death. Death is sitting atop an old, pale, belled horse. The bell is a symbol of time passing. Death holds an hourglass with sand running out, a classic symbol of time running out for the living. Death wears a spiked mystic crown of serpents that represents evil and worms feasting on decomposing bodies. The depiction of Death riding a pale horse comes from the book of Revelation. Quote, "Come, I looked, and behold, an ashen horse, and he who sat on it had the name Death." End quote. Also note that Death is not a typical skeletal creature, but has eyes, some flesh, and hair, symbolizing that death is an inevitable fact of life and can come at any point in one's life. The knight and the horse are solid and central in the engraving. They are surrounded by a tangle of branches, roots, horse's tack, and hair, which contrasts with the solidity of the knight and his horse, and suggests a tangible idea in an inverse world of changing form. The knight's lance and sword form a cross, which symbolizes a protection of faith, since Christ died upon a cross to save Christians from their sins. The tip of the lance is wound with a foxtail. The foxtail represents lies, but here it is held behind the knight, stressing the fact that lies are put behind the pious, which seek out the kingdom of God. A skull is sitting on a tree stump, representing death and human frailty. Durer signs his fame as AD, yet adds an S in front of the date. This could stand for Salus, in the year of grace, meaning salvation or safety, or it could be a tribute to Savonarola, a mystic writer who was burned at the stake. The dog running at the knight's side represents faithfulness. There is also a salamander on the ground. The salamander is a symbol of virtue. Leonardo da Vinci wrote about the salamander constantly renewing itself into fire for the sake of virtue. Both the dog and the salamander are hieroglyphs from Horus Apollo used to symbolize writers, mystics, and people innocently burned at the stake. thus another reason to believe the engraving was a tribute to Savonarola. Lastly, Durer was influenced by Martin Luther and humanistic scholarship. Durer created Der Reuter in an era of pre-Calvinist thought and the early Renaissance idealistic beliefs in ancient Greek artistic proportion. Der Reuter is a scholarly embodiment of a careful study of proportion, and symbolic detail combined with artistic skill creates this master engraving. As religious attitudes and beliefs changed throughout Europe, so the depictions of Christian art changed. Durer's Der Reuter is the perfect example of the art's changing beliefs in Christianity, combined with his new knowledge of early Renaissance art. Thank you.